Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started by officially welcoming all of you guys. Sawadee Kap, Sawadee Kap. Welcome to Wat Tung Yu. Nice to see all of you guys this morning. This is our group learning program where each Sunday I get together with students and help them learn the path to enlightenment. And this is a 7-month program where each Sunday at either 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. I share the teachings of the Buddha with students using this first book of our book series titled Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. And we're actually coming to the end of this program, and today the chapter that we're studying is actually called the Frequently Asked Questions section. It's not even a chapter. It's just at the end of the book where there's frequently asked questions. So that's what I'm going to be sharing today as part of our class, is these frequently asked questions that students ask about the teachings of the Buddha and the path to enlightenment. So you're going to get a bunch of random content related to the path to enlightenment. And we're also going to be discussing how to determine if you've attained enlightenment, because at this point in the program, I've been teaching students for about 6.5 months about how to get to enlightenment. So I have a section where I teach students how to determine if you've attained enlightenment. And then we're going to get into sharing the Buddha's last words, his final words, and kind of talking about his life coming to a close. So I'm going to be sharing that with you after we do our meditation. I usually start with meditation to help you train your mind and understand more about meditation. So I'll invite you guys here at the temple and everyone who's joining us online to attend the meditation by choosing to meditate if you'd like. I'm going to start the meditation with a chant. If you'd like to do the chanting, there's a laminated sheet on the table over there. The chants are in the original Pali language. This is the original language of the teachings of the Buddha. You're welcome to get a laminated sheet at any point, and even somebody might decide to hand them out to others. It has the original Pali, which is what the source teachings of the Buddha are captured in. And then there's English translations to show you what the Pali words actually are. So I use these chants as a way to ease the mind into meditation. These aren't a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony, or worship, or anything like that. It's not prayer. There's nothing like that in the teachings of the Buddha. He didn't actually teach rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. He didn't teach prayer either. What he taught is for you to train your mind in order to uproot certain pollutions in order to get to this enlightened mental state where the mind can be peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. So during the lifetime of the Buddha, they used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory, because everything that he taught was oral. So they needed some way to kind of commit the teachings to memory for the intellectual learning of the teachings. So we had them chanting every 2 weeks. They would recite his teachings word for word for word. Today, we don't need to chant in order to remember his teachings, because we have books, we have videos, we have podcasts, we have things like this. But I still chant because it helps to kind of invigorate the mind, give you some awareness of mind, awareness of the breath. If you look at the English translations, you can see there's a lot of admiration and respect and gratitude for the Buddha. I suspect that he actually didn't create these chants himself. They were probably created by his students, either during his life or after his death, because he would have been sharing the teachings in such a way that he didn't have any expectations and he didn't want anything from his students. So as they were learning to move from the anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings to this mind where the mind's completely peaceful and joyful permanently, people would have a lot of respect and gratitude for him. So I suspect either during his life or after his death, they created these as a way to honor and respect him. But it's not a prayer, it's not worship or anything like that. It really just helps to invigorate the mind and actually get more benefit out of the meditation itself. So after we do the chanting, then I'll guide you in meditation. I'll just use my voice. I'll be guiding you and teaching you how to actually meditate while we're actually meditating together. All of us here and those of you guys online, we can just all be meditating together. Then there'll be a period of time where it'll just be quiet and you won't hear me talking. You might hear an occasional dog bark or a bird chirping or a car go by, but this is all impermanent sounds. When you hear those things, you'll be able to just bring your mind back to the breath perhaps. And then after we meditate for that period of time where it's just quiet, then I'll come out of the meditation with another chant. The same exact chants that we went into meditation with, we'll come out of meditation with those chants as well. So when you're meditating, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught. There's seated, lying, standing, and walking. And oftentimes students are learning in the seated position, either on the floor in a chair or something like this. So if you're on the floor, you might just sit with your legs lightly crossed. You're not interested in them being real tight because you can inhibit the circulation and your legs can fall asleep or you can feel pain. So you just like your legs to be lightly crossed. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets the hips up in the the air so that you can lessen the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, and allows the circulation to flow. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use it. But it's not about everybody doing it exactly the same way. It's not possible for everyone to sit in exactly the same position. So some people like to put their palms on their thighs or their knees. Some people will put their palms up or rest their hands comfortably in their lap. It's really whatever's comfortable for you. You're not interested in the body being painful nor luxurious. So be in the middle where the body can be comfortable. And oftentimes people might like to use a chair. So if you'd like to use a chair at any point, feel free to use a chair. Some people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles. And then same thing with the hands and arms. Just find a place where it's comfortable for you, where the lower body and the hands and arms can be completely relaxed and comfortable. The upper body should be erect. By having the sternum up and the shoulders back, it allows the body to breathe in, get a nice full breath. It also keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. Whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull and lethargic. But if you were real rigid with the upper body, the mind might be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be erect so that the mind can be attentive and alert during the meditation. So again, I'm going to ease us into meditation with some chanting. You're welcome to join along in the chants. And then afterwards, I'll come back with some guidance on the meditation itself. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Bhutang Mahakevanhang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakevata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakevato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti pisu Mahakeva Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavito Anutero Purisa Dhammasati Satatavap Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes And start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled. Just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then when you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Once the breath is well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. ระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเกวาพุทธังมหาเกวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเกวัตตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเกวัตโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเกวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation, I would like to once again welcome all of you guys that are here at the temple, and those of you guys joining us online. Welcome to everyone, including those of you guys that joined us since we started meditating. For those of you guys that this is your first time here at the temple, I'd like to just let you know that there's a bathroom in the back of the room, the very last door on the right. You're welcome to get up and use the restroom at any time. There's even bathrooms outside the classroom. If you follow the main signs of the temple, it'll take you around to the main bathroom, so you're welcome to use the bathroom as you like. We even have water here, which is provided by our students, that you're welcome to help yourself to any water if you like. And I'd like to, like I said, just welcome you guys. It's really wonderful whenever students come together to be able to learn the teachings of the Buddha, because it's the very best thing that you could ever do for your mind, for your life, for those people around you, and for all of humanity. Because what the Buddha is doing is he's teaching you how to be more loving and more kind and more warm and more gentle in the world. And in this way, you're making decisions that are less harmful to the people around you. The teachings of the Buddha, they're not a bunch of beliefs that you believe and then hope something good happens when you die. Instead, you're learning teachings now in this life. You're reflecting on those teachings to independently verify whether they're true or they're false. And then you're practicing his teachings now in order to train your mind and move it to this enlightened mental state. What the enlightened mind is when the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. An enlightened mind no longer experiences any feelings such as anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, boredom, loneliness, shyness, resentment, jealousy, even the slightest displeasure is eliminated from the enlightened mind. And this is because an individual has been training their mind and they were uprooted certain pollutions that the Buddha discovered in the mind. And when you uproot these pollutions, not only do you eliminate the discontent feelings, but the mind experiences focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory because it's now performing optimally. And you'll notice that your personal, professional relationships really blossom. You won't have harshness and bitterness and hostility and animosity or resentfulness in any of your relationships. You'll be able to be harmonious with all beings around you. You'll get to the point where you're not even in a bad mood anymore because the causes and conditions that are producing the bad mood have been uprooted and eliminated from the mind. So you don't even experience a bad mood anymore by the time you get to enlightenment. But that doesn't come through belief. You can't believe your way to enlightenment. You can't even meditate your way to enlightenment. Meditation is important. It's an important thing that you need in order to make your way to enlightenment, but you need other teachings besides meditation as well. And that's why after we meditate, I will typically share teachings to help students to understand more of what you need in order to make your way to enlightenment. And that's what this group learning program is about. It's a 7-month program that helps you build a foundation and a framework to understand the path to enlightenment. And at this point in the program, I've been teaching for about 6.5 months, this particular iteration. I think I've taught this program 6 or 7 times by now. We're going to be restarting it on the 17th of March from the very beginning, where you can go chapter by chapter, either here at the temple or you can be joining us online, and you can learn the original teachings of the Buddha using the original words of the Buddha. And this will help you to be informed about what he taught. And then you learn those teachings, you investigate them, you examine them, you reflect on them to independently verify them, and then you practice them. And this is what uproots the pollutions out of the mind so that you can get to a point where the mind's peaceful and joyful, because it's no fun to experience anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings, and you can completely eradicate them from the mind by training the mind. This meditation that we just did is called breathing mindfulness meditation. This is a primary form of training that we use in addition to other things in order to train the mind to get to this enlightened mental state. What you're doing is you're focusing on the breath, and then when the mind moves off the breath, you're cutting that off, letting it go, and bringing the mind back to the breath. The goal of this meditation isn't to eliminate your thoughts. Sometimes people, when they try this the first time, they have a bombardment of thoughts, lots and lots of thoughts. So if you had that, that's very common. Or you might have had a thought and you might have indulged in that thought for a period of time, and then you realize, oh yeah, that's right, I'm meditating. Let me bring my mind back to the breath. Well, if this happened to you, you're not bad at meditation, you haven't done anything wrong. It's just the mind being untrained, it's undisciplined, it's uncontrolled. So if you had a bombardment of rapid thoughts or you indulged in a thought for a period of time, this is completely normal. But more and more as you train your mind will become more focused and more disciplined. You'll be able to control your mind more. So when you're focused on the breath, you're developing what's called mindfulness or awareness of mind. So you can be aware of what's going on in the mind. And you're also developing concentration by focusing on a single object like that. It's like exercising the mind and developing the mind to be more controlled so that you can have concentration. Much like when you go to the gym and you're lifting a weight, you're helping the muscle to become stronger and stronger. The same thing is true about the mind, is you're helping to become stronger and stronger by exercising it in meditation. It's almost like you clean this body every day, and you need to clean the mind too. If you're not paying attention to the mind, you're not really doing what you need to do in order to live this better way of life that the Buddha taught. So you're developing this wholesome quality of mindfulness and concentration, and you're also training the mind to let go. Let go, let go. So if 20, 30, 50 times during your meditation, you had to let go, let go, let go, let go, and keep coming back to the breath, this is wonderful. Because what's causing your mind to be angry and frustrated and irritated and all these other discontent feelings is that the mind's holding on. It doesn't want to let go. It wants things to be a certain way. And if you get what you want, you get those pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. And if you don't get what you want, you get painful feelings like sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. These feelings are all occurring because the mind is longing and yearning. It's wanting something. It's wanting something to happen in a certain way. And if you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings. And if you don't get what you want, you get those painful feelings. It's almost, the unenlightened mind is almost like a 2 or 3 year old child that wants ice cream. And if mommy and daddy gives it ice cream, it gets so happy and so excited. But if the little child doesn't get the ice cream, it gets angry, it gets frustrated, it starts throwing a temper tantrum. This is what the unenlightened mind does. If things happen in the world the way you want them to happen, your mind will experience those pleasant feelings. But if you don't get what you want, you get those painful feelings. So you can liberate the mind from this through training of the mind. And that's meditation that helps you to do that. So in meditation, you're cutting off anything and everything. When something comes up, you're cutting it off and cutting it off and cutting it off, because you're disciplining the mind. You're training the mind to be able to let go. But then in daily life, what you do is very different. In daily life, whenever you notice that your mind is longing and yearning and you're chasing after something, you notice the anger starting to arise, that's what you cut off. You cut off the anger, you cut off the frustration, you cut off the annoyment. But if you have a wholesome thought in daily life, like maybe you'd like to take your mom to dinner, or you'd like to call her and see how she's doing, go forward. You don't need to cut that off. So in meditation, you're training one way, but in daily life, you're doing something different, which is you're just cutting off the unwholesome thoughts. This is very much like a professional athlete. A professional athlete can play a certain sport. Like maybe if I was a pole vaulter, I would do that as a professional sport, but my activity in the gym looks very different than my sport. I might do weight training, cardiovascular training, agility training, but that looks very different than what I do when I'm doing pole vaulting. So the same thing is true when you're exercising the mind in meditation. You're training it in one way. You're developing the qualities of mindfulness or awareness of mind. You're developing concentration, and you're developing the ability to easily let go. And now in daily life, you use those qualities to benefit you, that you can be aware of your mind, so that when you notice the frustration or the disappointment or the guilt or shame or the loneliness or boredom starting to arise, you can cut that off and let it go. And now over time, you train your mind to no longer experience these discontent feelings, because the mind is going to want to form this conditioned feeling based on some condition. Then you'll experience a feeling. So for example, if it's sunny outside, you'll be happy. But if you form that happiness based on a condition like the sun, your happiness is impermanent, because the sun is not permanent. So that means your happiness is not permanent. This is why you haven't been able to get to permanent happiness, because the mind is forming its inner feelings based on some condition, and that condition is not permanent. So if you get happy when you see the sun, that means when it rains, you get sad and you get frustrated, you get irritated. Or if you have a certain bank account balance and you get happy when your bank is at that balance, that means when it goes below that, you're going to get sad, because it's a conditional feeling, and that condition is not permanent. Everything around you is impermanent. So if you base your inner feelings on some condition, which is what the unenlightened mind is doing, that condition is impermanent. It's temporary. So that means your feeling of happiness is temporary. So if mom does this, I'll be happy. But mom can't do that permanently. Or if dad does this, I will be happy. Or if brothers and sisters or boss and coworkers do this, I will be happy. But they can't do that permanently. So your happiness isn't permanent. Your mind ends up moving to the sadness or the anger or the frustration. So this is the conditioned feelings that the unenlightened mind experiences. And what you'd like to do is, when you notice that the mind is arising a conditioned feeling, you'd like to break that up and not allow the mind to experience that conditioned feeling. So the meditation is helping you to learn how to do that. And then in daily life, you practice in that way. The Buddha has a core central teaching called the Eightfold Path, that an individual who's interested in really truly getting on the path to enlightenment, you would need to learn the Eightfold Path inside and out, backwards and forwards. And that group learning program that I'm going to be restarting here in a couple of weeks, that's what we're going to start with. I'm going to go through and walk through that very slowly and very methodically, so students understand what the Eightfold Path is, because that's the path to enlightenment. I'm even going to be teaching it this week. I'm going to be starting a course tomorrow, Monday through Friday. It's a Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment course. You're welcome to come here to learn. You're welcome to join online. I'm going to be teaching Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And students are welcome to to come, and there's no cost for any of the classes or courses or any of the resources that I share. You're welcome to come learn, where you'll be able to learn and build up your practice of the Eightfold Path and all the other teachings that you need to build a real foundation. And this Eightfold Path is the core central teaching that's going to provide you the guidance that you need in order to make your way to enlightenment. Just like if you had a speaker system and you had 8 dials and you were trying to get this beautiful sound to come out of the speakers, you would dial these 8 dials in and get a better and better quality sound out of the speakers. The same thing is true about the mind, that this Eightfold Path that the Buddha taught, when you dial this into your life closer and closer, the mind performs more and more optimally. And that's how you can get to this enlightened mental state where you no longer experience any anger, sadness, frustration, or any of those other discontent feelings. And you can experience the peace and the joy that is the enlightened mind. So this is just a little bit about the teachings of the Buddha, just to help you get started to understand a little bit about the teachings of the Buddha. But today's topic that I'm going to be sharing with you is actually the frequently asked questions of this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. There's a book that we use for this program called, it's part of the Words of the Buddha, The Path to Enlightenment, Revealing the Hidden Book series. And the very first volume is titled Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. And I've been guiding students through this particular book for the last 6.5 months. And we've gotten to this point where we're now covering the frequently asked questions section. And over the last 6.5 months, students have been learning and learning and learning all the foundational teachings. And there's all this kind of miscellaneous content that didn't really fit into any other part of the book. And I put it in the very back of the book called the frequently asked questions section. So I'm going to walk through and teach you all these different frequently asked questions. And it's, I'm sure, going to help you based on wherever you are. If you're just starting out to start to understand the teachings of the Buddha, this will surely help you, because these are the frequently asked questions that students tend to ask me. And even if you've been on the path for a significant period of time, this will also help you too, because you may have these same questions as well. So I'm going to share this content with you. And as we go, you're welcome to ask questions. Here at the temple, if you'd like to ask questions, we have microphones in the white bowl here. All you need to do is pick up a microphone. There's a gray switch on the front, a little button. You just press that button. We'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online as well. So once you press the button, the lights will come on, and you just wait like a second or two, and then you just hold it up to your chin, and then we'll be able to hear you here at the temple. They'll be able to hear you online. And for those of you guys online, you can ask questions by putting that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Or in Zoom, you can raise your hand electronically, and I'll be able to see your question. You'll be able to open up your microphone and ask your question here at the temple. So feel free to ask any and all questions as we go. I'll pause at the end of each one of these sections to give you guys a chance to ask any questions that you like. So this first question is, how do I become a Buddhist? Okay, this is a very common question and I get all the time. Well, what I'll share with you is that the Buddha himself was not a Buddhist. Right? I am not a Buddhist. This label of Buddhist, you're going to actually need to eliminate this from the mind in order to get to enlightenment. If you carry around this label of I am a Buddhist, this is part of what the Buddha refers to as personal existence view. There's a certain identity that the mind is holding on to, like I am American, or I am Italian, or I am Canadian, or I am Chinese, or I am Korean, or I am Irish, or I am Australian. Any of this I am, you need to eliminate it. Like I am a police officer, because if you have this I am a Buddhist in your mind, well, when people say something complimentary about Buddhists and you identify with I am a Buddhist, you'll get pleasant feelings. You'll get happy and excited because they're complimenting a Buddhist and you identify with I am a Buddhist. But it's only a matter of time before somebody says something negative, degrading, and disparaging about Buddhists. And if you identify with I am a Buddhist, now you're going to think they're talking about me, right? You could be at a restaurant and 2 tables over, somebody's talking negatively about Buddhists. And if you identify with I am a Buddhist, you're going to be angry or frustrated or agitated. So in terms of getting to enlightenment, you're going to need to eradicate any kind of self-identity like that, where you don't identify with I am a Buddhist or I am American or any of this I am. This is one of the teachings of the Buddha. So there isn't any requirement or need to consider yourself a Buddhist. There's nobody in the world that has the ability to say, this is what a Buddhist is, and if you do these things, you are now a Buddhist. And if you don't do those things, you are not a Buddhist. So it's unwise to adopt any kind of identity like I am a Buddhist. So I encourage students to not think about I am a Buddhist. Instead, you might think about it as you're choosing to learn the teachings of the Buddha, and you're learning these teachings, and it's a better way of life. It's to help you train your mind. It's to help you make wiser decisions in the world. It's to help you awaken to this enlightened mental state where the mind can be peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. But you don't need to identify with I am a Buddhist in order to learn and practice the teachings of the Buddha. And keep in mind that the Buddha himself was not a Buddhist, right? Just like Jesus Christ was not Christian, right? So you can understand that aspect of it, and you don't need to identify with I am a Buddhist. Sometimes people feel like they want to belong to something. They want to kind of be a member of something. You don't need to do that. You can be on this independent journey where you, as an independent individual, a free will thinker, someone who's looking to understand the path to enlightenment, you're on your own independent journey with a teacher, kind of like a tour guide pointing out the way to enlightenment, but you are your own individual, your own independent journey, learning and practicing to be able to get to that enlightened mental state. Sometimes people ask this question: do I need to give up all my possessions, occupation, and relationships to attain enlightenment? The answer is no. You don't need to do that. Sometimes people think that that's what the Buddha did in order to get to enlightenment, which isn't actually true. He did leave the royal palace and he went off on his own for 6 years. And people think that he never came back. They think that he abandoned his family. But this isn't actually true. He came back after 6 years. His son ends up ordaining with him to learn. His wife, his mother, who was his stepmother, many of his cousins and brother-in-laws, so much so that his father came to him and begged and pleaded with him to stop ordaining people from the royal family, because his dad was concerned that the royal family was going to fall apart if he continued to ordain people from the royal family. So the Buddha did not leave all the relationships in his life. Sometimes people think that you can't have love and be enlightened. This is untrue. An enlightened being has significant amount of love in their mind for all beings in the world. Everyone around them they have love for. So you don't need to give up your possessions, your occupations, and your relationships. What you need to give up is what we call craving, desire, attachment. This is the longing, yearning. So for example, a lot of us have mobile phones, right? This is a possession that you might have. If you hold on to this mobile phone and you want it to be permanent and you're craving and longing and yearning for it to be permanent, when it breaks, you'll be angry or frustrated. Or when you lose it, you'll be discontent. Or if somebody steals it, you'll be discontent. Or maybe even if you just misplace it, your mind will be shaken up because you're holding on to this, wanting it to be permanent. So you don't need to eliminate the object itself. You need to eliminate the way the mind's longing and yearning and craving and trying to hold on to it. So you don't need to eliminate your possessions, your occupations, and your relationships. You need to eliminate the craving, desire, attachment that's in the mind, where the mind's latching onto it, clinging to it, wanting it to be permanent. That's what you need to eliminate, is the clinging in the mind. When we talk about craving, desire, attachment, craving, desire, attachment isn't the possession itself. It's not the object. It's not the phone that is the attachment. It's the mind longing, yearning, wanting it to be permanent, right? If it was the object that was the attachment, nobody could ever get to enlightenment, because you need clothes, you need food, you need things in order to sustain your life. Nobody would ever be able to get to enlightenment if the craving, desire, attachment is the object itself. The craving, desire, attachment is inside the mind. It's the longing, yearning, thinking the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. It's the mind thinking these things around you are going to provide some kind of fulfillment. So the mind wants a new boyfriend or new girlfriend, and the mind thinks that that's what's going to make me feel whole and make me feel complete. So now the mind gets attached. Or you might think this new computer or this new mobile phone or this new job or this new car, this is what I need. This is what's going to complete me. But these are just objects. They aren't going to make you feel whole. These objects are impermanent. So if you latch on to these objects, wanting them to be permanent, then when you experience impermanence due to the universal truth of impermanence, that everything around you is impermanent, now when your phone breaks, you'll be sad and discontent because you're craving for it to be permanent. Or if you misplace it, or if somebody steals it, or if you lose it, you'll be shaken up when you lose this phone. So what you need to do is eliminate the craving, the desire, the longing, the yearning, the holding on to things, wanting it to be permanent, not the possessions, occupation, or relationship itself. Then people ask typically, what is reincarnation and rebirth? Are they the same thing? Well, the Buddha taught the cycle of rebirth, and all of his teachings are independently verifiable, even the cycle of rebirth. You may not have the wisdom right now to understand how to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. You may think that you only have one life, but I can assure you that every single being is experiencing the cycle of rebirth, this constant rebirth. But you shouldn't believe me. There's ways for you to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. This isn't something that you typically approach when you first get started with the path to enlightenment. I encourage people to set aside the cycle of rebirth when they're first starting to learn, because there's these core central teachings that are going to help you to experience more peace and more joy. And that's what I would suggest that you focus on when you first get started, because what's happened in the past is in the past. And what may or may not happen in the future, it's in the future. It doesn't matter right now. Right now, you're in this human state. Your mind is discontent, and you need to be able to fix that. And it's the core central teachings that's going to help you to fix that. But the cycle of rebirth is something that students will oftentimes approach after about 1.5 years or 2 years of learning. And I have books to help you learn that. I have content to help you independently verify that the cycle of rebirth is true. But that's not typically something that somebody will do early on. So the Buddha taught the cycle of rebirth, which is each individual being is in this constant cycle of being reborn over and over and over again. And each individual existence is a completely new existence. There's a new body and a new mind, and they come together for this existence. At the end of this life, if there's craving, desire, attachment in the mind, then this is the fuel that causes rebirth. That is what produces the next life. So for example, if you have a fire and there's logs in the fire, the logs are the fuel. And as long as there's logs in the fire, this fire is going to keep burning. And not only is this fire going to keep burning, but it's going to send off sparks into the air. And when this spark travels through the air and it lands, it's going to light a new fire. So as long as this fire has fuel, it's going to send off sparks and it's going to produce a new fire. Same thing is true about the human mind, that as long as you have fuel in the mind at the end of this life, it's going to send off sparks that's then going to produce a new life or a new mind that then comes together with a new body, depending on what realm that an individual is reborn into. But each time, this is a completely new body and a completely new mind. So this is what the Buddha taught as the cycle of rebirth. Some people use the phrase reincarnation, and they attribute this to the teachings of the Buddha. The Buddha did not teach reincarnation. What the thought is behind reincarnation, this is a belief, this is a concept. What the Buddha taught is a teaching, and it's the part of the natural laws of existence. But what the belief or the concept of reincarnation is that you have a soul in the body, and when this body dies, that soul continues forward into producing a new life. This isn't what the Buddha actually taught. He didn't teach whether there is a soul or there isn't a soul. With reincarnation, they believe that you are the same exact being from life to life to life. You've just taken up a different body. This isn't what the Buddha actually taught. It conflicts with some of his very core, very central, basic teachings. His very first teaching is the universal truth of impermanence, meaning that things are constantly changing and there's nothing in the material world around you that is permanent. Well, reincarnation is based on a permanent soul, and that conflicts with the very basic, most simple teaching of the Buddha. The Buddha also taught the universal truth of non-self, meaning there is no self here, that this body nor this mind is you. It's not who you are. And I go into detail on this when I teach the core fundamental teachings of the Buddha. The the concept or the belief of reincarnation conflicts with the universal truth of non-self. So when you get into the teachings of the Buddha and you see his core central teachings and you hear how reincarnation is being taught, you can see that it's actually in direct conflict with what the Buddha taught. That he didn't teach this reincarnation, he taught what's called the cycle of rebirth. In the original teachings, the way this is referred to is samsara. That's the Pali word that they use to refer to the cycle of rebirth. This word samsara is often translated as the cycle of rebirth. But if you look at how the Buddha teaches the samsara, when he describes samsara, you would really probably call this the cycle of new existence, because there isn't actually anything being reborn. There isn't anything being reborn from one life to the next. It's a completely new body. It's a completely new mind. There are residual memories and cravings, desires, attachments from one life that transfer to the new mind. So if you think about a cardboard box, there's a cardboard box that's a certain size, a certain shape, a certain color, a certain texture, and there's contents in this box. When this box disintegrates and falls apart, the contents are still there. The craving and the residual memories in the mind, they're still there. These cravings and residual memories move into a new mind. It produces a new mind. It's a new cardboard box. It's a completely different shape, different color, different texture, different size, but the contents are similar to what was in cardboard box A. So there isn't anything that's actually reborn. Each time it's a new body and it's a new mind. So this word samsara, even though it's been translated as the cycle of rebirth for many, many years, when you look at how the Buddha teaches it, it's actually more described as the cycle of new existence. That's a better way to think about it, is that it's a new existence every single time. So even though people have been translated it as the cycle of rebirth, I encourage students to think about it as the cycle of new existence. I use the cycle of rebirth because that's what people know of from the Buddha, some people, but in the books and in the teachings and when I teach the cycle of rebirth, I encourage people to think of it as the cycle of new existence because it's a new existence every single time. There isn't anything that's actually being reborn. Another common question that I hear is, can I be Buddhist without believing in rebirth? Well, you guys already heard what I shared about being Buddhist, right? It's unwise to identify as I am Buddhist. But in terms of believing in rebirth, you shouldn't believe anything. I teach students this when they first get started learning with me. Don't believe anything. Don't believe anything I say. Don't believe anything that's in the books. None of the teachings of the Buddha is based on belief. With belief, you don't know what's true or false. And if you don't know what's true or false, it's easy for your mind to be shaken up. And you might be making decisions on false beliefs. So the teachings of the Buddha aren't based in belief. So you should never believe anything, including the cycle of rebirth. So absolutely, you can be on the path to enlightenment while not believing in the cycle of rebirth. And I encourage you not to believe in anything. But ultimately, the more you peer into the teachings of the Buddha, and particularly the cycle of rebirth, if you investigate that through the wisdom that you can independently verify it, you'll get to the point where you know it's true. Sometimes people ask me, David, do you believe in the natural law of karma or karma? And I say, nope, I don't believe in karma at all, or I don't believe in karma at all. I know it's true 100% because I can see the cause and effect. The cause and effect, when you make a decision, it produces a certain result. That's what the natural law of karma is. It's not punishments and rewards. It's not mystical and magical. There's no being that's overseeing it. It's not about blame or fault. It's about cause and effect. So for example, if you're polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, people will tend to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful with you. That's the results of your decisions. That's your karma. Or if you're impolite, unkind, unfriendly, and disrespectful, people are going to tend to be that way with you. That's your karma. So I don't believe in the natural law of karma. If you peer into it deep enough with the teachings of the Buddha, you can know that it's true 100%. And the same thing is true about the cycle of rebirth. If somebody asks me, David, do you believe in the cycle of rebirth? Nope, I don't believe in the cycle of rebirth at all. But I know with 100% certainty that it's true because I've independently verified it for myself through various ways that you can independently verify it. And you may not have the wisdom to know how to do that today, but ultimately, if you journey on the path to enlightenment, you can get to the point where you can independently verify it. So don't believe in anything, including the cycle of rebirth. This next question here, number 5, is what does it mean to take refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, in the Sangha? And is there a ceremony to do this? So the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, these are Pali words that are referencing certain aspects of the Buddha's teachings. I think you guys know the Buddha is the individual who is a teacher. What makes a Buddha is that they get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. Then they dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings with countless people. And countless people get to that enlightened mental state during that person's life. Then they preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people get to enlightenment after their death. So this is what a Buddha is. What the Dhamma is this is a Pali word that means the teachings, right? This is the teachings of the Buddha. The Sangha is a Pali word that means community. We refer to this as the triple gem, the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha. Or I just use the English words because it's much easier. The Buddha, the teachings, and the community. These are called the triple gem or the triple jewel. You would need to have confidence in the Buddha, the teachings, and the community. The community is the community you're part of because you're learning from a teacher, but you're also learning from other community members. When you're out and about and you're spending time with various people from your community of practitioners, you're learning. You're seeing how people are practicing generosity or right speech or some of the other teachings. So you need to have all 3 of these things in order to get to enlightenment. You're going to ultimately need to have confidence in the Buddha, access to his teachings, and you'll need to be part of a community. If you just had one of these things or 2 of these things, you wouldn't actually be able to get to enlightenment. So if you had confidence in the Buddha, but you didn't have access to his teachings and you weren't part of a community, you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment. Or if you just had access to his teachings, but you didn't have confidence in the Buddha and you weren't part of a community, you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment. Or if you were just part of a community and you didn't have confidence in the Buddha nor access to the teachings, you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment. So over time, what you do is you develop confidence in the Buddha, you gain access to his teachings, and you become part of a community. And this is what helps you to get to enlightenment. When you first start on the path, you may not have confidence in the Buddha. You probably have doubt whether or not the Buddha lived. You might have doubt whether his teachings truly lead to enlightenment. You might even doubt whether enlightenment exists at all. You might doubt your teacher. You might doubt your own ability to get to enlightenment. This is very common that the mind has doubt. But you don't eliminate doubt through belief. That's not how you eliminate your doubt. The way you eliminate doubt about the Buddha, the teachings, or the community, your teacher, or your own ability to get to enlightenment is you investigate his teachings. You examine them. The more you investigate and examine his teachings, you'll be able to see that they're true through your reflection. And then when you're practicing his teachings and you're uprooting these pollutions out of the mind, and your mind in your life is becoming more peaceful and more joyful, you'll get to a point where you have no doubt that these teachings are leading to an improved condition of mind. You won't be enlightened yet at that point, but you'll at least have confidence in the Buddha. You'll have confidence in his teachings. You'll have confidence in your community. You'll have confidence in your teacher, and you'll have confidence in your own ability to get to enlightenment because you will have seen significant progress in the mind. So the Buddha himself never had any kind of rites, rituals, ceremonies, or worship. This didn't exist during the lifetime of the Buddha. He didn't teach any of that because in order to get to enlightenment, you need to cultivate your mind. You need to develop your mind. You need to produce wisdom in the mind and develop wholesome qualities like mindfulness and concentration, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, equanimity, generosity. You need to produce all these wholesome qualities, and you need to get rid of certain unwholesome qualities. And this comes from cultivating wisdom. And there's no rites or rituals or ceremonies or worship that you can do that's going to produce wisdom in the mind. So during the lifetime of the Buddha, there were no rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. But now, 2,500 years after his death, there's certain people over time that have added rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. And one of the things that people have added is this ceremony to take refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, or the Buddha, the teachings, and the community. This isn't something that's required. Some people think that you have to go do this ceremony in order to become Buddhist or in order to learn the teachings of the Buddha. But this isn't actually true. This ceremony that people do, it's thought that you go to a temple, there's going to be lots of people, sometimes 50, 100, 300 people that are taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha. Well, what refuge is protection. If you have a refuge, you go to this place for protection. So you might think of like a cabin in the woods as a refuge, or you might think of like a castle as a refuge. The Buddha talks about refuge during his life. In his teachings, he says that these mountain shrines or these woods in the forest, it's not a proper refuge, that you can't get protection within like a castle, for example, or in the woods. You can't get protection, because what's going to protect you is your wisdom and your decision making. If you make wise decisions, that's what's going to protect you. So in terms of getting refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, or refuge in the Buddha, the teachings, and the community, what the Buddha is really talking about when he's talking about refuge is getting your mind to the point where it's protected from discontentedness and you're protected from unwholesome activities, that you have the wisdom to make wise decisions to protect yourself through making wise decisions. So for example, if you didn't have wisdom, you might choose to go out to a bar or nightclub at midnight or 2 a.m. in the morning, and you might go and drink and use drugs and alcohol, and now the bar closes and everybody's out on the street, and now a fight breaks out because everybody's drunk and using drugs, and now somebody has a knife or a gun and you get shot or you get killed, right? This is unwise. Your unwise decisions have led to this unwholesome result. Well, the way that you get to protection, the way you get to refuge, is you understand that it's unwise to go out to places like that. It's unwise to go out and be a part of a group of people that are using drugs and alcohol. Not that you would judge these people or look down on them, but it's just unwise to associate in an environment where there's drugs and intoxicants that are being ingested, because those types of things will happen. There's going to be a fight, or someone might have a knife or a gun or something else like this. These things can happen. So the thing that's going to protect you in this life is your decision making. Your wise decisions is what will protect you. So there's no ceremony that you can do that's going to protect you or that's going to allow you to take this refuge. The way that you get to this refuge or this protection is by learning, by reflecting to independently verify, and by practicing the teachings, training your mind to cultivate wisdom. That's what's going to lead to your protection or your refuge. All right, so do you guys have any questions on any of these 5 here that I've been talking about? You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand. Or here at the temple, you can use the microphones to ask questions. Does anybody have a question? Okay, it looks like we have a question here online. I've got to take the mic off because the text is kind of small and I can't read it. Let's see. After rebirth, how does one find the Buddhist teachings again? In other words, how do know to begin to practice the teachings again? Okay, let me put this back. So once somebody has learned in one particular life, their mind has experienced a certain amount of progress. And now if they die and their mind is unenlightened, they're going to be reborn. Once you get to enlightenment, there's no more rebirth in the cycle of rebirth. The Buddha doesn't say what comes next after enlightenment, whether there is or there isn't something next, but we know that there is no rebirth. There's no more rebirth in the cycle of rebirth. But if you fall short of enlightenment, there is going to be rebirth. But the Buddha never uses rebirth as a way to guilt, shame, or fear somebody into learning and practicing his teachings. He's just explaining the way the world is and helping you understand what's truly going to happen. So the Buddha doesn't explain the way the world should be, and if everybody follows these rules and commandments, then the world will become peaceful. He's explaining the way the world is. And the way the world is that there's this cycle of rebirth that you can independently verify that this is occurring. So if an individual has learned in a particular life and they haven't got to enlightenment yet, then that means they're going to be reborn. But when they're reborn, remember this cardboard box A, there's cravings, desires, attachments, but there's also residual memories that are in the mind that now move to this next life or this next mind. And now this new mind has these cravings, desires, attachments, and it has these residual memories of what it was doing in its previous life. If you've ever experienced deja vu, if you know what this is, deja vu, some people have experienced this. This is your residual memories from your past life resurfacing. That oftentimes people experience deja vu, which is you're doing something right now and you're like, oh my goodness, this feels so familiar. I know I've done this before, but you know it wasn't in this life. This is your residual memories coming up to the surface. And usually what people do is they push it aside because it's usually like a 5-second, 10-second thing. And you're just like, whatever. And you just move on with your life. But this is your residual memories surfacing up to the mind. This is one of the ways you can see that there is the cycle of rebirth. You have lived and been in existence previous to now. So these residual memories that you've had from previous lives, if you've learned and practiced the teachings of the Buddha, they will still be there. They will still be on board. You will have a certain amount of wholesomeness. You're not enlightened yet. You're still in the cycle of rebirth, but you will have a certain amount of wisdom from learning in a previous life. And now that will guide you to be looking for teachings in this life that are the Buddha's teachings. So you'll end up finding your way back to the wholesome teachings because you were learning and practicing them in a previous life. So this is something that people experience. So if you're learning the teachings of the Buddha and you're like, wow, this makes so much sense. This is so clear. This is so evident. Sometimes people have studied the teachings in the past, and now when you're studying them in this life, they just seem so clear, so realistic, so apparent to you. They're really easy to learn. Other people, when you're learning the teachings of the Buddha, it can be quite challenging and quite difficult. And this can be because you didn't actually learn them in a previous life. But either way, it doesn't matter. You can actually learn them and practice them in this life and experience improvements in this life and potentially even get to enlightenment in this life as well. So great. Thanks for your question. Okay, I'm just going to check Facebook and YouTube here. Looks like Steve has a question as well. Okay, you're up, Steve. I don't see any questions here on Facebook or YouTube.
Thank you, David. So I've understand from, and I understand that what the Buddha taught, he doesn't talk too much about, what happens after death of the soul and this sort of thing, and understand that it doesn't really affect the application of the teachings in the daily life. But it does get confusing to think about it because, the common, when I say the common, I guess the common view of Buddhism, is this thing of an individualized soul of some description being reincarnated. So the implication of that is that, like within the current life, I can absolutely, through the cultivation of right view and et cetera, come to understand that this unwholesome activity is going to have adverse consequences in this form or that form in this life. But also the common view, whether it's correct or incorrect or confused or whatever, is that also I have a longer term incentive to keep going on this path, because even if the adverse consequences of my unwholesome actions don't occur in this lifetime, it's going to occur at some time in the future, maybe in another rebirth experience. So in the common view that it's not Steve that's going to be reborn, obviously, but there is something is going to be affected by my actions now and manifest in karma in a rebirth existence. But if I'm in this life and generate this activity, whatever, in my life I have an incentive. This is fading.
A lot of impermanence.
And but with the post-death stuff, I can kind of just let it go, because I was in box A, and okay, there's some sparks that want to go over to box B, but that's a new mind, and nothing to do with me, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do I get a free pass at death?
Yeah. So remember that there's nothing in the teachings of the Buddha that are guilting, shaming, fearing you into learning and practicing his teachings. He's not trying to coerce you. He's teaching you true reality, that there is this life that we're referring to as Steve, and let's just say the next life is Barbara. Yeah, Steve and Barbara are two completely different beings, right? There's no coercion to say, hey, you got to be doing this because you're going to be the same exact being in the next life. That's not what the Buddha taught. He didn't teach that there's a soul. He didn't teach that there is a soul, there isn't a soul. He didn't teach that you're the same being every single time. You're a completely different being, right? So the motivation for you to get to enlightenment needs to be from within your own mind, that you realize like, hey, I don't like these painful feelings. I don't like the anger. I don't like the sadness. I don't like the frustration. I don't like the agitation or annoyance or the disappointment or the animosity, the resentfulness, and all the ways that you're experiencing these discontent feelings. It's not about motivating you through coercion or trying to force you or guilt you or shame you or fear you into doing anything of that nature. The Buddha's teachings are explaining to you what's truly happening, and what's truly happening is there's a new being every single time. And you could live the rest of this life with all these feelings. And if that's what you choose to do, then that's what you choose to do. And it is going to produce another being. That's what you could do. You could choose to do that. Or you could choose to do something different, which is get to enlightenment in this life so that then you can experience the peace and the joy for the rest of this life. And then you'll be able to benefit from that. And there won't be any other beings after this. It's kind of like the way that I think about it is like when I go to the park and I take with me certain food items, I'm not going to leave my trash behind to affect another person because it's unwise to leave my trash behind. I'm going to pick up my trash, take it with me, or throw it into a trash bin so nobody else has to deal with my stuff, right? And that's what we know is to be wise. So perhaps you might think of it that way, that you've got these pollutions in the mind. There's been beings before you that haven't dealt with this stuff. So let the buck stop with you, we say in America. Let the buck stop with you, if you know what that phrase is throw away your trash. Get rid of the pollution. Don't allow your trash in the park to affect another person. And if you would like to use that as motivation, you can, or just use it as you're interested in getting away from those discontent feelings. But you shouldn't feel any kind of coercion or forced or pressured or fear or guilt or shame. That's not what the cycle of rebirth is about. Oftentimes, when we grow up in certain traditions, we're guilted, shamed, or feared into learning and practicing a set of teachings because we're afraid of going to hell or afraid of going to heaven. Sometimes when students have a lot of craving for enlightenment and they really want to get to enlightenment and they're really afraid of rebirth, I say to them, hey, you've been reborn countless times in the past. If you need to be reborn 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 more times, so be it. You need to be reborn. It's not wise to put pressure on yourself to escape the cycle of rebirth, because now you have a craving to escape the cycle of rebirth. And as long as you have a craving to anything, you're not going to be able to get to enlightenment. So if somebody craves to get out of the cycle of rebirth, they're not going to be able to get out of the cycle of rebirth because they have a craving to get out of it. So in some cases, I share with students like, hey, you've been reborn countless times in the past. What's another 5, 10, 20, 50 times? But at the same time, I motivate them to say, hey, it's wise to get to enlightenment in this life. But each person has to motivate themselves based on wise decision making, not on any of this other stuff that we're talking about here. This is just to explain to you what is truly happening in this world. It's not to try to motivate you to learn and practice these teachings, where sometimes people look to things like this for motivation. And I don't encourage you to do that necessarily. Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, looks like we might have something else coming in on Zoom. Let's see. For all of you guys in Zoom, the Zoom text is kind of small, so it's challenging for me to read. If you guys decide you would like to raise your hand, that actually is wonderful, because then we'll hear you here at the temple when you open up your mic. Okay. You're just saying, I really appreciate your response. Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome, Courtney. Pleased to help you. I thought that was a question. My eyes are really old. My eyes are impermanent. All right. So I'm not seeing any other questions here. So let's move on to the next set of questions that are very typical when students are first getting started on the journey to enlightenment. Or, you have a question? Okay, yeah, we'll back up. What's your question? Yeah, just be patient with it. If you press the button and then just wait a second, then you can talk. Okay. And you're welcome to take the mic back to your seat, wherever you're sitting, and keep it with you too, because as you guys have questions, you can just pass it around and share it.
Thank you for teaching. And I'd like to ask, what's the goal for all of this? Living as a Buddhist or meditation, to live a happy life, or live more wisely, or sober, or to jump out of the cycle to the nirvana? Or should we set a goal for all of this?
Yeah, the goal is twofold. The ultimate goal is to get to enlightenment. And getting to enlightenment means that your mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. You no longer experience any discontent feelings. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll no longer experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, boredom, loneliness, shyness, resentment, jealousy. Even the slightest displeasure is eliminated from the enlightened mind. You'll have focus, concentration, clarity, deep memory. Your personal, professional relationships will be at ease. They'll really blossom. You won't have any bitterness or animosity. You'll be living a life that is completely peaceful and joyful. You won't have any kind of difficulties or struggles any longer. When you're experiencing struggles and difficulties, this is because your mind lacks wisdom. And there's certain wisdom that you don't know, so your mind really struggles in this situation. But by the time you cultivate the wisdom on the path to enlightenment, you won't be struggling in the world anymore, because you'll fully understand all the natural laws and you'll be able to function in the world with ease. When you lack wisdom, you can't function with ease because you don't understand the world around you, so you struggle and you have difficulties. And this is because the mind's unawakened, that it lacks wisdom. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you fully cultivated wisdom, you understand these natural laws, so there's no more struggles or difficulties in the world. You might have certain challenges that you're trying to accomplish a certain goal or a certain objective, and you'll apply effort and energy to accomplishing that, but it won't feel like a struggle or it won't feel difficult anymore. So getting to enlightenment is the ultimate goal, and experiencing that peace and the joy in your life is at ease. As a result of that, an individual won't be reborn any longer. So some people do try to use the cycle of rebirth as motivation. I know that when I first started learning the teachings of the Buddha, I didn't know whether the cycle of rebirth was true or false at that time. I didn't believe in it. I didn't think it was true. I didn't know how to verify whether it was true. But I told myself, even in the slightest chance that the cycle of rebirth is true, I'm not interested in coming back to this world ever again, because my life has been, in the past, horrible enough that I wasn't interested in ever coming back ever again, to experience the sadness and the misery, the sorrow, the grief, the despair ever again. So I used it to a certain degree, the cycle of rebirth, as motivation to get to enlightenment, but I wasn't scared of it. I wasn't fearful of it. It was just like, okay, I'm not interested in coming back. So the ultimate goal is to get to enlightenment, and having done so, you'll get that peace and joy, and then you also won't be coming back into the world, because you've learned what you need to learn in this world, that you've cultivated the wisdom that you need. But as long as you haven't cultivated the wisdom about this world that you need in order to get to enlightenment, you'll keep coming back over and over and over again and experiencing rebirth and continuing to experience sadness and anger and frustration and all those discontent feelings as well. But getting to enlightenment, you'll escape all of that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay. So now moving on to the next set of questions. These are the complete set that's in the book. Number 6 is, what is the purpose in life? What is the purpose of our human existence? This is a common question that I get asked. And the simple way that I explain it to people, and you can see it in the book, how I describe it in detail, is I say there is no purpose. There's no purpose to this life, right? We all come to this world. We have jobs, we have hobbies, we have relationships, we have all these different things, and we just do this in order to fill up our time. We try to invent a purpose. We try to create a purpose, and we try to always look at the brighter side of things, which is wise, right? We should always look at the brighter side of things and always look to enjoy what we do in the world, right? It's always nice to spend time with friends and family and do hobbies and activities. But all these things, they're not going to lead to your peacefulness. They're not going to lead to your joy. If you have a certain hobby, while you might enjoy that hobby isn't what's going to give you the permanent peace or the permanent joy. While you might have a certain boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife or a certain job or something like this, wonderful. That's great to spend time with those people and do those kinds of things, but that's not ultimately what's going to lead to your peace and your joy. What's going to lead to your peace and your joy is training your mind. So oftentimes nowadays, particularly in modern times, this is a question that comes up is, what is our purpose here? And I suspect where this is actually coming from is the human ego, that we have become the dominant species on this planet, that we have, conquered the forest, right? Even like lions and tigers and bears, we are more dominant than them even. At one time, human beings weren't the dominant creature on this planet. At one time, there were beings like dinosaurs that were much more dominant, much more powerful than us. And I suspect that people who lived during prehistoric times, they didn't walk around the world thinking about what's our purpose on this earth. Right? They were probably thinking about, what do I need to do in order to survive? What do I need to do in order to live? What do I need to do in order to get to my next meal? Right? This is what prehistoric human beings were thinking about. They were trying to figure out clothing and fire, and they were trying to figure out how to communicate to each other. They weren't thinking about what's our purpose on this earth. But nowadays, we have created systems like education systems, manufacturing systems, food systems. We've made it very easy for human beings to exist on the planet. But in prehistoric times, they were just concerned about their survival. That's really all they were concerned about. Nowadays, we have such ease that we can go buy food at the snap of a finger. We can buy clothes at the snap of a finger, where back during prehistoric times, they had to really work for a lot of those things. So they were just occupied with trying to survive. But nowadays, we have such modern conveniences, and we've become this dominant creature on the planet, and our ego, which is the arrogance in the mind, has gotten to the point where it's like, hey, there's got to be some purpose. There's got to be some higher purpose to why we are here. This is what the mind is trying to invent, that there must be some higher purpose, meaning I am significant. I am a significant being. This is oftentimes what we're taught, that you are this great, wonderful being, and you got to go off into the world and leave your mark on society. Well, this is a real burden to carry around in the mind. And if 8 billion people were going off into the world and marching off into the world to leave their mark on society, this would be a real burden to carry around. Instead, if you've ever been in a plane and you've ever been up high and you've looked down and you saw human beings going around the earth, I look at it, I think that we look like a bunch of ants. If you look at an ant colony carrying things around, it's just the ants carrying things around. People are going from one store to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. They're just chasing after certain cravings that they have, going from one place to the next, to the next. Now, some people might say, well, wow, David, that's a pretty pessimistic view. I don't think of it that way. I'm not a pessimistic person. I'm very optimistic, very positive, think about things in a positive way. But it's just looking at true reality, that this earth doesn't have anything that's permanent. There's nothing that you can latch onto that is going to be permanently fulfilling for you. The thing that's going to be permanently fulfilling is training your mind to let go of all these temporary experiences that you're having, and getting to the point where the mind doesn't have this ego or this arrogance and thinking that I am a somebody. I need to leave my mark on society. There's a higher purpose to my existence. This is the ego thinking that way. This is the arrogance and the pride, the boastfulness. So there is no purpose to your existence. And then oftentimes it's not satisfying to people. And they're like, there's got to be something. There's got to be something. So then if you read the book, what I put is say, okay, well, if that's not satisfying to you, here's your purpose. Your purpose is to get to enlightenment so that you don't keep coming back to a world of nothing over and over and over and over again. So if you don't like the idea that there's no purpose to your existence, then you can assume the purpose of, my purpose is to now get to enlightenment so that I can eliminate the ego, and then you won't keep coming back to nothing over and over and over and over and over again. Okay, so you can read the book and you'll see a lot more details that I shared there. Number 7 is, can I exercise the physical body and still attain enlightenment? The answer is yes. Sometimes people know that the ordained practitioners typically don't exercise, and they think that you can't exercise and still get to enlightenment. Remember, what the path to enlightenment is about is making wise decisions. And it's wise to be physically fit and physically healthy, because even though this body isn't you and it doesn't belong to you and you can't take it with you, you are going to inhabit this body for a period of time. And the healthier that this body is, the more at ease the mind can be. So if you're exercising, this can help you to be able to be at ease, that the body can be more healthy. But just understand that this body isn't going to be permanently healthy. And understand that it's important not to get attached to your exercise. So some people can get attached to their exercise, where if they exercise, they feel great. And if they don't exercise, they're grumpy and they're irritable. This is the mind craving, having desire, having attachment, holding on. It's unwise to become attached to your exercise. So if you exercise and do that and enjoy it and be healthy. But then if you're going to continue to do that in a way that's going to lead to your enlightenment, it's important that you don't get attached to it, where you are experiencing all this excitement when you exercise, but then when you don't exercise, you get grumpy and irritable. This is the unenlightened mind going up and down and up and down. But also the other thing that can happen when some people really get into exercise a lot, the ego can kick in, where there's a certain amount of arrogance or pride, and you might be in the mirror kind of pumping iron, or you might be kind of looking down on other people who don't exercise or who don't lift as much weight as you. You might be looking down on them with arrogance or pride or boastfulness, and this would be unwise. You wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment as long as those aspects of the mind are there. So it's not the exercise itself that is the problem. It's what the mind is doing. If the mind gets attached to exercise, you're not going to be able to get to enlightenment. Or if the mind is arrogant or prideful or boastful, you're not going to be able to experience enlightenment because of that. So you can surely exercise and still get to enlightenment. Some people ask, is medicine and medical procedures for the body an attachment? This is a misunderstanding when this question is being asked. People don't understand what an attachment is. A craving, desire, attachment is the mind. It's the mental longing and strong eagerness for something, wanting something to be permanent. It's not the object itself. So for example, say I was going on a hike and I had a liter of water that I was taking with me on this hike. And let's just say I left it in my car and I went out on this hike, and 30 minutes into my hike, I realized that I forgot my water back at the car. I could be like, oh my goodness, I forgot my water, and hurry up and clamber back to my car and throw open the door and grab the water. And my mind's all shaken up because I didn't have my water with me. Maybe I sprained my ankle on the way back to the car. In this situation, your mind is attached to the water. The water itself isn't the attachment. It's the longing and yearning for the water that is causing the mind to shake up. Because there can be another person who forgets their water in the car, and they can be 30 minutes down the trail, and they can say, I forgot my water. You know what? I'm going to be out here for about 6 or 8 hours. I should probably go back and get my water. And then they calmly make their way back to their car. So it's not the water itself, because in both of these examples, there's water. The difference is, in the first example, the individual had craving, desire, attachment for the water. So their mind was shaken up when they didn't have it with them because they were craving it to be permanent. And now they made a bunch of unwise decisions as they made their way back to the water. The second example, the individual didn't have craving, desire, attachment in their mind, and they were able to maintain their calmness and their composure and make their way back to their car and get their water. So the attachment isn't the water itself. It's not the object. It's how the mind is longing and yearning for it. So the same thing is true here with medical procedures or medicine. That's not the attachment itself. It's how the mind's longing and yearning for it. So for example, I've had my nose broken a couple times as I was growing up. I was very active as a boy and had my nose broke a couple of times. And I've had surgery to adjust my nose, and it's still actually not completely straight, but I just said, whatever, it doesn't matter. So I've had this, they call it a rhinoplasty. It's actually plastic surgery to straighten out your nose because you have a deviated septum and you need to breathe. So some people get this surgery in order to help them to breathe. Other people get this surgery because they want a certain cosmetic appearance of their nose. So the procedure itself isn't the attachment. It's how the mind is choosing to do it, right? So if an individual is choosing to straighten their nose in order to have some kind of medical benefit, they might be choosing to do this out of the medical necessity. But there could also be somebody who's doing it for cosmetic purposes, and this could potentially be a craving, desire, attachment. So it's not the medical procedure itself, because it's the same exact medical procedure. It's how the mind is longing and yearning for that particular thing. Same thing like a medicine. You could take a pain medicine because the body had an injury and you need this pain medicine in order to help you get over that injury. But then some pain medicine can be addictive. And even after the injury is gone, somebody can get addicted to that medication and be taking it for some kind of high or something like that. So it's not the medicine itself. It's how the mind is longing and yearning in this situation. So that can help you to understand what a craving, desire, attachment is. Sometimes people ask, what is the significance can I apply to dreams? Sometimes people will contact me and say, hey, I had this particular dream. What does this mean? Can you help me to understand what this dream means? Well, what I share with people is there's no significance to your dreams. Your mind is very creative. It's a very amazing thing. If you try to put all this significance into your dreams, this is the ego. Oh, I must be special because of this dream. Or, oh, does this mean that something special is going to happen to me? I've got to figure this out. Well, you could probably talk to 5 different people who are dream interpreters, and you'll get 5 different explanations of that dream. Instead, what I advise people to do is to realize that when you have a dream, it's not true reality. It hasn't truly happened. And when you wake up, you need to just move on with your day and just leave it behind. Just let it go. Well, sometimes when people are dreaming, they might dream that they've died, and then they wake up and they have fear. What you can use this for is realize that you're having a craving, desire, attachment, that you're holding on, that maybe you're afraid of death. By the time you get to enlightenment, you don't have fear. There's no fear at all, even the fear of death. You've trained your mind to eliminate that. So if you're having a regular dream and you're waking up and you're feeling fearful because you keep dreaming about your death, you can use this information to help you on the path to enlightenment in order to realize that you need to eliminate this fear of death. And there are certain techniques and tools that the Buddha shares to teach you how to eliminate your fear of death. So you could use your dream in that way to help you in terms of your journey to enlightenment. But in terms of trying to figure out whether you're special or some special thing's going to happen to you, this is just the ego kicking in, and I would advise you to set that stuff aside. But if you're having some kind of recurring dream like that and it's producing some kind of discontentedness in the mind, this can be an indication to you of certain cravings, desires, attachments that are in the mind. Or say that you had a partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife 10 years ago, and that relationship is long in the past. And say you keep having this recurring dream about this person. This is the mind still holding on to that individual. And this can help you to see that your mind hasn't quite let go yet. So you can use those kinds of things in order to help you on the path to enlightenment. And that's where you would consult with a teacher, and then we would help you to understand the tools and techniques of how to eliminate your fear of death, how to eliminate your attachment to a particular partner in the past, and so forth and so on. People ask this question, why is enlightenment permanent? Because one of the things you learn is the universal truth of impermanence, that all the things around you are impermanent. Things are constantly changing. And people are sometimes surprised when they hear that the enlightened mental state is permanent. Once you attain enlightenment, you no longer experience any of those discontent feelings. It's permanently in that mental state. The reason why is because when the Buddha teaches the universal truth of impermanence, what he's teaching is that all conditioned objects are impermanent. A conditioned object is something that arises, it changes, and then it fades away. This is what's called an impermanent or conditioned object. This is a conditioned object. This carpet is a conditioned object. This human body is a conditioned object. Your relationships are conditioned. They arise, they change, and they fade away. Your bank account is a conditioned object. Everything around you is a conditioned object, right? So these things arise, they change, and they fade away. There's some condition, and then because of that condition is impermanent, so it arises, changes, and fades away. So the anger, the sadness, the frustration, the irritation in the unenlightened mind, these are conditioned feelings. These feelings, they arise, they change, and then they fade away because they're based on some condition. The happiness, the excitement, the elation, it's a conditioned feeling. It arises, it changes, and it fades away. The sadness, the anger, the frustration, it arises, it changes, it fades away. It's impermanent. It's a conditioned feeling. The boredom, the loneliness, the shyness, it's a conditioned feeling. It arises, it changes, and it fades away. There's some condition in your mind that is producing this feeling. The condition is craving, desire, attachment, the mental longing, strong eagerness. There are certain pollutions in the mind that are producing these feelings in the mind. These are conditioned feelings. By the time you get to enlightenment, you have unconditioned your mind. You have purified your mind. You've removed all the conditions that are producing these conditioned feelings. An enlightened being no longer experiences conditioned feelings. They experience unconditioned mental qualities, where the mind is experiencing unconditioned peace, calm, serenity, contentedness, and joy. You're experiencing unconditioned happiness. The conditional happiness is temporary. It arises, it changes, and it fades away because it's based on some condition. If it's sunny outside, you'll be happy. If your bank account is this balance, you'll be happy. If your mom does this, you'll be happy, right? But that is a conditional feeling because it's based on some condition. It's going to fade away. It's impermanent. By the time you get to enlightenment, your mind is unconditioned. It means the qualities, they don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. You're just happy because you're happy. You're just joyful because you're joyful. There doesn't need to be any condition met in order for you to be happy or to be joyful. In the unenlightened state, if your bank account is this, you'll be happy. But when it's here, you'll be sad. When you get to enlightenment, if your bank account balance is this, you're already happy. You're not happy because of the bank account balance. You're happy before you even saw your bank account balance. But then when your bank account balance goes here, you can still maintain your happiness and your joy because you're not basing your happiness on the bank account. Or you're not basing your happiness on what mom or dad does. You're not basing your happiness on the sun or anything else. You have unconditioned mental qualities of peace and calm, serenity, contentedness with joy. So when you have unconditioned mental qualities, there's no condition that's produced it. The way that you get to that enlightenment is you've unconditioned the mind. You've cleared out the mind. The mind is not polluted any longer. So when you have unconditioned mental qualities, they're permanent because they don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. But if you have conditioned feelings, they are impermanent. They're going to arise, change, and fade away. So the enlightened mind is experiencing these unconditioned qualities. You wake up, you're already happy. Before you even looked outside, before you even talked to anybody, you're already happy when you woke up. All day long, you're happy. Doesn't matter what's happening in your life. You're happy all day long. And then when you go to sleep, you're already happy. So for example, like if you got a phone call that your mom was in the hospital or that your mom died, you might get sad. Or if your dad was in the hospital, you might get sad. It's not the love that's causing that. In the unenlightened state, people think that it's love that's causing the sadness. But what that is that's the craving, the desire, wanting mom to be permanently healthy, wanting dad to be permanently healthy. And it's not possible for them to be permanently healthy because they are impermanent. By the time you get to enlightenment, you can maintain your happiness and your joy despite that mom and dad are unhealthy, because you already know that it's not possible for mom and dad to be permanently healthy. But in the unenlightened state, when you're craving for mom and dad to be permanently healthy, when they're unhealthy, you're not getting what you want. You want them to be healthy, so you're happy when they're healthy. But when they're unhealthy, you get sad. This is conditional feeling. In the enlightened mind, you already know that mom and dad can't be permanently healthy. It's not possible. So when they're healthy, You're already happy before they're healthy. You're not happy because they're healthy. You're just already happy. So that then when they are sick, you can maintain your joy. You're not happy because they're sick, but you can maintain your happiness despite they're sick because your mind isn't craving for them to be permanently healthy. You already know that it's not possible for them to be permanently healthy. So in the enlightened mind, those qualities of peace and joy, they're permanent because they're unconditioned mental qualities. There's no condition that's producing those. The way that you're experiencing the peace and joy is that you've eliminated the conditional experiences that are being produced by the pollutions in the mind. And now with a purified mind, the mind can experience permanent peace and permanent joy. Okay, so this is why enlightenment is permanent. This is also a common question that people ask is, why are donations of support for teachers of Gotama Buddhist teaching so important? There's two reasons why this is something that's part of the teachings of the Buddha. The first one is that in order to continue the teachings of the Buddha and share them in the world, while we offer them at no cost to the public, it does cost funds, and it does take resources to be able to share the teachings. So like here at the temple, we run the air conditioning, we have lighting, we have water, we have different things that we need to purchase in order to offer these teachings. So we offer the teachings at no cost, but it does need resources and funds from us to be able to offer the teachings, like microphones and computers and projectors and all these things. They do cost money, and that those funds and those resources need to come from somewhere. So the Buddha taught students to be able to offer donations to be able to help to fund these types of things. And a teacher, if they're teaching the way that the Buddha taught, they should be using some of those funds to sustain their life for like food, water, clothing, shelter, and medical care. But then you should see all the other things coming back to the community where a teacher is providing opportunities to learn by having projector and screens and meditation cushions and microphones and being able to reach out to students to be able to help them to learn the teachings. So you shouldn't see anybody becoming rich from teaching the teachings of the Buddha. Here in Thailand, if somebody is doing that, they will arrest you and put you in jail. They take it very seriously. There was someone who was doing this several years ago. They had like Gucci sunglasses and Fendi bags, and they were riding around in a private jet. They're chartering a jet every once in a while. And this person escaped, and they ran to the USA, and they issued a Interpol warrant, and they had the American police to arrest this person in California, and then they extradited them back to Thailand. And they went through the court system, and they were found guilty of fraud, and they were sentenced to 20 years in prison for choosing to use the teachings of the Buddha as a way to solicit money and get money to enrich themselves. So Thai people take this very seriously, but you should see anybody that you're supporting through sharing the teachings of the Buddha, that they'll use a little bit of that money for themselves to support their life, but then you should see that they're sharing resources and teachings to help people actually get to enlightenment. That's what the Buddha taught. So the first reason why people offer donations is to help the continuation of the teachings of the Buddha. The second reason is that by practicing generosity, it helps you to get to enlightenment. The primary problem in the mind is this craving, desire, attachment, holding on to things. The mind becomes selfish. The mind holds on and wants things to be permanent. So we use breathing mindfulness meditation to train the mind to let go. And that's one of the trainings that we use. But the Buddha also taught generosity because this trains the mind to let go as well. So when you're giving and you're sharing your time, your effort, your energy, your resources, more than is strictly required without any expectation of anything in return, it's training your mind to let go. So there's no requirement, or there's no expectation, there shouldn't be, from a teacher for a student to donate to them or to give their time, effort, energy, or resources. But some students, they do choose to practice generosity because it helps your mind to let go. And not only would you need to practice generosity towards a teacher or a temple in order to develop the mind and practice generosity, but in order to get to enlightenment, you'll need to practice generosity with other people around you too. Keep in mind that the Buddha was a prince. He was a part of a royal family. He was about to become the king, and he stepped down from that. all those royal riches and decided to live this life of homelessness, where he lived in people's homes. People offered him homes. They donated food to him. So he didn't teach generosity as a way to enrich himself. He taught this because that's what he practiced during his life, in his previous lives, and he knew that that's what it took for him to get to enlightenment, is to train the mind to let go and practice generosity. So he taught generosity because he knew that that's what led to his enlightenment, and it would lead to your enlightenment too. So if you choose to practice generosity to support the continued sharing of the teachings of the Buddha, you're helping the teachings become accessible to other people in the world, but you're also helping your own mind to be able to practice and train to let go, and let go of craving, desire, attachment, which is the cause of your anger, your sadness, your frustration, and your other discontent feelings. So this is why people choose to support the teachings of the Buddha, is to help the continuation of the teachings and to help their own mind so that they can get to enlightenment by training the mind to not be selfish and stingy. So let me know if you guys have any questions on any of these. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Or in Zoom, you can raise your hand electronically and ask any questions that you like. All right, looks like Rachel, you have a question. Go ahead, ma'am.
David, yes, I have a question about the dreams. My question is, what's your view of subconsciousness? Because people would say, or psychoanalysts would say, subconsciousness tells something deep in our heart or deep in mind, like the desires, the yearnings, the fears, the worries, etc. And the dreams usually tells something about our subconsciousness. But you just mentioned that maybe there is no meaning in dreams, or if we can sense the fear, we can just try to eliminate the fears in our daily life. So I would like to know, what's your view of subconsciousness?
Sure. So in the unenlightened mind, before you get to what we refer to as the second jhana, there's a conscious mind and there's a subconscious mind. And both of these are polluted, and they need to be purified in order to get to enlightenment. The conscious mind isn't as polluted as the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is much more heavily polluted. And both of these need to be purified in order to get to enlightenment. So as you're training your mind on the Eightfold Path, when you get to what we call the second jhana, which there's 4 jhanas, these are the preliminary phases that the mind experiences before it gets to the first stage of enlightenment. When you get to the second jhana, you experience what's called oneness of mind, or unification of the mind, where there's just one mind and you have full awareness of the entire mind. There's no longer a subconscious mind by the time you get to the jhanas. So the subconscious mind can be very heavily polluted, and it can motivate unskillful conduct because it's sending up thoughts to the conscious mind. But ultimately, by the time you fully train your mind, you're not going to have a subconscious mind. There's just one entire mind. So this comes with training. So if somebody's subconscious mind is polluted and they're having dreams, and those dreams are being produced via the subconscious mind, okay, so be it. Nonetheless, you need to gain this full awareness of the entire mind so that you can purify the entire mind. So for me, I don't distinguish between the conscious mind and subconscious mind, because to me, it's all just the mind, and it all needs to be purified. And in order to get to enlightenment, that's what you're going to need to accomplish. So whether it's coming from the conscious mind or the subconscious mind, it doesn't really matter, because the ultimate goal is to purify the entire mind so that you can get to the peace and the joy, the liberation, and the freedom of those strong feelings.
Thank you. And may I ask another question?
Sure.
That is about donation. Like, people go to temple. What are your suggested behaviors to do when we visit temples? Because sometimes people go to temples, but they will offer like incense or flowers or offer money. And what's your suggested offerings?
Yes.
Or do you suggest people do such offerings?
Yeah, sometimes when people are doing that, what they think is that the statue of the Buddha, that his spirit is there, and they think that they're offering these incense to the spirit of the Buddha or the flowers to the Buddha, but the Buddha never actually taught these things. These are things that people are believing after his death. that the Buddha never taught to create statues of him. He never taught that his spirit is in those statues. He never taught to worship the statues or pray to the statues or anything like that. So people might be doing those things today, and that's their choice. I don't have any thoughts on that other than that's their choice. It's a misunderstanding of the teachings of the Buddha, but that's their choice. At least they're practicing generosity. But if you talk to people who work at these temples and who are trying to offer these teachings to help people to learn and practice, the things that a temple needs are things like electric and water and, carpets and electrical equipment or video equipment to be able to share the teachings, microphones. We need food and water and clothing and shelter and medical care for the people who are actually sharing the teachings. Those are the things that are actually most beneficial in a temple environment. It's wonderful that people choose to practice generosity at any type of generosity, but incense and flowers and things like this to the statues, it doesn't actually benefit anybody because there's no spirit of the Buddha there. Those statues are just a piece of artwork. That's really all they are. I would encourage people to direct those resources to supporting the infrastructure of the temple and the livelihood of the people who are at the temple who are sharing the teachings. That would be the ideal way to practice generosity.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Looks like we have another question here. Yeah.
Wait. Hi, teacher. So I have one question. Is so you mentioned about carving desire, and I'm thinking when all the people we really want to maybe make progress in study or promotion in the work, all the things is kind of like a desire to us, and we pursue that. It's kind of like the purpose in the life. But I'm thinking, so if we really have some all this kind of wave, all this kind of purpose, why we still need an entitlement? Why we wanted a permanent?
Yeah, because the mind lacks wisdom. People translate it as ignorance, or I refer to it as the unknowing of true reality. We also describe it as confusion or misunderstanding, that the mind is misunderstanding. It has this lack of wisdom, this confusion, or this unknowing of true reality. What the mind thinks in the unenlightened state is all this stuff is going to make me happy. So if I just get more money, or if I get a bigger car or nicer car, if I get a bigger house, this is what I need to make me happy. And then what happens is the mind will chase after those things, thinking that it's going to be fulfilling. And if you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings. And if you don't get what you want, you get painful feelings. This is coming from the lack of wisdom that the mind has, or this unknowing of true reality. And as long as that's there, then the mind will keep chasing. It's like an unquenchable thirst that the mind keeps chasing after external things, thinking that these external things are going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. So as long as that lack of wisdom is there, the unenlightened mind will continue to crave and crave and crave and crave and chase and chase and chase. And that's kind of like what the unenlightened mind knows for motivation. Like, why do you do something in the world? Why do you choose to do certain things? Because of a certain craving that the mind has. And the unenlightened mind doesn't have the wisdom to understand how to pursue things as a goal, as an objective, or an interest based in wise decision making. The way that the mind functions in the unenlightened state is it chases after its own selfish desires, or it's all the way on the other side where the mind is indifferent and it could care less. It's like, I don't care. I'm just not going to do anything. So because of these two polar opposites, these two sides of the spectrum, the mind can't be peaceful and joyful when it's chasing after things, thinking that something external is going to provide lasting satisfaction. It can't get to permanent peace and permanent joy there. And it also can't get to permanent peace and joy when it's indifferent and it could care less about what's going on in the world. So the Buddha teaches this middle way where you're pursuing things as a goal, as an objective, as an interest, and you're gradually working towards things based on wise decision making. But that takes training to teach the mind how to do that. Because of its lack of wisdom, it doesn't know how to do that in day-to-day life. So as you train your mind more and more and you start letting go of the cravings, the mind doesn't just come straight to the middle. as you're letting go of your cravings, it usually overshoots the middle, kind of like a pendulum, and it swings to this indifference. And then you realize that that's not peaceful there either. So the mind starts coming back, but it kind of overshoots the middle again, and it starts craving. It doesn't go up to such high craving, but it overshoots the middle and it kind of has some more craving. So over time, as this mind kind of is like a pendulum swinging back and forth, it eventually comes to the middle more and more. And that's where the mind can be at ease and it can be peaceful and it can be joyful. And it just takes training of the mind to be able to do that, because it doesn't do it naturally. That the mind inherently, because of its lack of wisdom, is going to have craving. But you can eradicate that from the mind by arising wisdom and learning how to train the mind to get to this peace and joy.
Wow. So in one word, is that like to keep balance in our life and still like pursue good goals?
Yes, you can create balance in your life. And you know, people talk about this even in Western society. They talk about living a balanced lifestyle. But people often don't even know what that means. They might use that as like what we call a buzzword, like live a balanced lifestyle, live a balanced lifestyle, live a balanced lifestyle, work and play, live a balanced lifestyle. But people don't understand what it truly means. The Buddha was teaching this 2,500 years ago, and he shows you exactly what it is to live this balanced lifestyle by coming to the middle. And you need to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments to be able to do that. And there's a core central teaching called the Eightfold Path, which is going to teach you the middle way. That's the middle way that the Buddha taught about how to live this better way of life. So the Buddha didn't introduce this religion with rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship. He taught this better way of life. He taught what did it take for him to get to this peaceful and joyful mental state? And now he shared that from the age of 35 to 80 to be able to help people over those 45 years to understand what it took for him to get to that peace and that joy. And he's sharing with you the teachings that will help you to do that by learning about the wisdom of the world around you, that you understand how the world is. He didn't explain the way the world should be. He's explaining the way the world is. And now when you awaken to those natural laws, you'll navigate this world more readily. Because when you don't understand the world around you, you'll struggle. You'll have difficulties. And that's what those discontent feelings are. They're showing you that you haven't cultivated wisdom enough yet. That the anger, the sadness, the frustration, the boredom, the loneliness, all those discontent feelings, it's showing you that your mind's not fully awake. It's kind of like the red light on the dashboard of your car, that if the red light on the dashboard of your car came up, you would know there's a problem in this car and you need to pull over and you need to address this problem. So the anger and the sadness and the frustration and all those other discontent feelings, that's the red light showing you, hey, pull over. You need to look inward. You need to look at and understand what's causing these feelings so that then you can eliminate them. So the very first teaching of the Buddha is called the Four Noble Truths. This is what I usually start students with. You guys are coming in here at the tail end of this program, so you're getting the frequently asked questions section of the book. But on Tuesday, I'm going to be teaching the very first teaching of the Buddha, the Four Noble Truths, and the entire Eightfold Path, so that you can understand what it takes to really get to enlightenment. So you guys are welcome to join any part of that course that you like. That's where you're really going to get the tangible things that you need in order to make real progress on the path to enlightenment. This is a bunch of miscellaneous information here. You have a question?
Relating to her question, like finding purpose and then the basic needs of finding the middle way and not caring, and then donations. Okay, how do I put this into? What would be another word for purpose? Let's say if I was a college student and living here in Chiang Mai, basic needs of people are water, clean air, whole foods. And if I hear that I don't have a purpose in my community for the benefits of others, to put an idea out there to make it better for cleaner air, cleaner water, blah, 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 then I don't have a purpose. I don't have like a mission, or I don't care. I'm not going to do anything. So then, okay, I'm donating, let's say, to universities, to temples, or to hospitals, but then they're also not doing anything towards these basic needs that people need. So then what would be the best way to approach purpose? If I don't have a purpose to make change or really see the benefits of others, then throughout history, a lot of people that felt that they had a purpose, they made change. Yeah, I don't know how to. Do you understand where I'm going? Like,
I think so.
Okay.
I can answer what I think you're asking, and then if I haven't answered your question, just ask a follow-up question.
Okay.
So it's not to say that there's no goal or there's no objective in the world. Like, you can have goals and objectives as things you're trying to accomplish in the world. Like for me, I'm working to restore the teachings of the Buddha back into the world so that more and more people can understand the teachings of the Buddha. That's my goal. That's my objective. But the moment I think that this is my purpose, that somebody has put me on this earth because this is my purpose, this is the ego kicking in. Like, I have some higher purpose, that I've got some, divine purpose that somebody has put me here. This is what I was describing, like the ego kicking in. But I certainly have goals. I certainly have objectives, not only goals and objectives here to restore the teachings of the Buddha, but I have the goal and objective to be a good father and raise a son that can be a viable adult in the world and contribute to the world in positive ways. I have a goal to be a good husband and treat my wife in respectful and wonderful ways. I have a goal to be a good neighbor, living in the village that I live in and not impact my neighbors. But this isn't my purpose. This isn't like a divine purpose that I need to adopt and, I need to march off into the world and, fulfill this purpose. Sometimes that's what the mind does, is it adopts this idea that I have a purpose and now I need to fulfill that. It's almost like an expectation. I have this expectation that I'm putting on myself, that there's this burden I'm going to carry around, and now I got to constantly work to fulfill that purpose. And if I don't fulfill that purpose, I failed. And this is a real burden to carry around in the mind. And that's what I'm suggesting, that you should let go of all of that. But of course, like for you, like I know you're a teacher and you have this goal of helping students to learn English, right? You teach a lot of students from other places to learn English. This is a great goal, a great objective. You're helping people to learn a language, to be able to interact in the world. This is a wonderful thing to do with your life. But if you thought that was your purpose, now what happens when you have an interest to maybe go sell gym equipment? You're like, oh no, I can't do that because this is my purpose. My purpose on this earth is to teach people English, and I don't feel comfortable letting go of teaching English to go sell gym equipment, even though inside you really aspire to sell gym equipment and help people to become more fit and more healthy. Now you're going to be holding on to this purpose, that this is my purpose in life. Well, then when you get to the end of your life, you've gone all this time where you've held on to this job as being a teacher, and you never got to fulfill all these other things that you could potentially have enjoyed in your life to fulfill. So that's why I teach people that there is no purpose to your life. Don't adopt that as, this burden that you would carry around. Instead, realize there's certain goals and certain objectives that you would like to work towards, and then be willing to let those things go and move on to your next goal and your next objective. And this will help you to maintain your peace and your joy rather than holding on to this thing that you think is your purpose.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that answered my question.
That answers
Goals
it?
and objectives pretty much is better than, because you hear a lot.
Mm-hmm.
When you're and out there, you have a purpose, you have a mission, you have to accomplish or make an impact or do this or that. Like, let's say in colleges or universities or even certain places that, or the next generation, let's say, like if we don't tell them, hey, or then they're just gonna sit back and do nothing. Like, I don't have a purpose. So you get what I'm saying. But having a goal and objectives, I completely hear it and I see it. It's just sometimes when you hear it in other places, it's like, okay, what are they meaning to say really? And how can now let's say, put it into a kindergarten form and tell them, okay, now,
It's the subtlety of language, right? One of the things that you'll learn on the path to enlightenment is becoming very in touch with vocabulary. This is one of the things I had to realize when I was on my journey, is that I realized that certain words that I was using them in ways that it's not really intended to be used that way. So I had to really penetrate into vocabulary and start to learn words and how they're used very closely, because oftentimes people are using words in ways that they're not intended to be used, and this confuses the mind and makes it very difficult. So for example, one of the things you said is like how some people come into the world and they change the world. I would say that nobody has ever changed the world. Because the world is the world. The world operates with these natural laws of existence. And if we think we need to change the world, then this is like, how can we change the natural laws of existence? This just isn't possible. What an individual needs to do is they need to learn the natural laws so they can learn the way the world is. Sometimes people don't understand the way the world is, so they feel like they need to change the world because they think there's something wrong with the world. Well, sure, there's a lot of unwise things that happen in the world, and it would be wonderful if people didn't do those unwise things. But those people need to change their behavior. They need to change their decision making. But it's not going to change the world. They're changing their mind. They're improving the condition of their mind. And there's been people, surely, that have influenced people to change their mind, right? People have taught to eliminate hatred and to be more loving and to be more kind. And those leaders have come into the world and taught to be loving and kind and eliminate hatred. And those individuals who learned from them, those people chose to become more loving and kind. And because of their choices to become loving and kind, the world became a bit more loving and kind. But they haven't changed the world. All they did was change their mind. Right? Do you see the difference?
Thank you. Yeah.
So what the Buddha is doing is the Buddha is teaching you how the world functions, so that now you can navigate the world more readily, and you don't have to go off into the world trying to change the world. You can go off into the world trying to understand the world. Let me try to understand the world. And if I understand the world and how the world functions, then you realize there's nothing for you to change but your own mind. That's the only thing you need to change, is your own mind. You don't need to change the world, because you can't. There's 8 billion people in the world. You can't change all those people. All you can do is change your own mind. So by learning how the world is, now you realize, like, yeah, I don't need to change the world. I can drop that burden. I don't need to carry that burden into the world.
Just paraphrasing, like,
Yep, it's the subtlety of language.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Changing the word is it's just saying it differently, influencing or understanding the world.
Yeah, I'm interested in seeing lots of people get to enlightenment. Yeah. And if lots of people get to enlightenment, the world will become a more loving and peaceful place. But that happens through people changing their own mind and becoming wise. It doesn't become from me changing the world. Sharing these teachings of the Buddha, I'm not trying to change the world. I'm looking to help people understand the world. And then when they understand the world, then they will function more wisely. And then the world will become a more harmonious place to exist. But you can get to enlightenment and you can get to the peace and the joy, irregardless of what other people choose to do. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That was a wonderful question. Thank you. And thank you for your answer. My question is more so about attachment and negative feelings. You might have an answer, it might just be an opinion. What are your thoughts on attachment and negative feelings for like babies or children in the developing mind? Like, I feel like as the mind develops, like traffic is fearful. So that's how the mind figures out that's bad. I'm not going to jump in front of a car. So they're feeling that negative feeling. Or eating food or a warm blanket brings me pleasure. So that's how the mind kind of learns how to live and strive and survive from, I feel like, maybe some attachment and having those possible negative feelings. And I find as the mind develops, you can get rid of those as you've learned. But how do you feel about that in a baby child developing mind?
Okay. So any kind of what I would refer to as painful feelings, you're referring to as negative feelings. anytime those are arising, it's always from within the mind. It's the craving, desire, attachment. So like the example that you use, like somebody crossing the street and seeing traffic, it's not the traffic that's producing the fear. It's the craving to hold on to the world, and the individual's probably afraid to die, right? Or they're afraid to get injured. Where we can get to the point where we liberate that craving. We don't have that craving, desire, attachment, and we don't have the fear anymore. But then we just make wise decisions to look both ways and cross the street when it's clear. So whenever the mind is shaken up with something like fear, you'll have difficulties making wise decisions. So I don't know if I'm answering your question 100%, but the ultimate goal is to eliminate the cravings, the desires, the attachments. A child, as a baby, they don't have the wisdom to be able to do that themselves. You can get to enlightenment as early as age 7. And there's things that you can be doing with a baby that will help them on the path. My son is here today, actually. I helped him when he was an infant. We were doing things to help his mind. He didn't know what we were doing, but we did. We were doing certain things to help him eliminate his discontentedness. He very rarely cried when he was a baby because of the things we were doing with him as an infant. And then when I started formally training him at the age of 6, it was really easy to teach him the teachings of the Buddha. And now at age 11, he very rarely gets discontent. And this is one of the best things you could ever give to a child, is the wisdom that it takes to get to this peace and joy. He's not enlightened yet. He still has more work to do, but he very rarely gets discontent. And this came from what we were doing when he was an infant and then into his early childhood as well. So it's possible for the mind to eliminate these feelings, but it's not until about age 7 that during the lifetime of the Buddha, there were people who got to enlightenment at the age of 7. Nowadays, I don't know any 7-year-olds that are enlightened, but this is why you see, like, if you've been around any Thai children here, Thai children are very respectful, they're very polite, they're very kind, they're very friendly. They learn these teachings growing up as children, where the place where we came from, you don't usually see that very frequently. So it's possible for an individual to cultivate wisdom early in life, and then that really helps them later in life as well. And this is why you see so much peace and so much joy here in Thailand, because people are learning these teachings from very early in life. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I guess a follow-up question, that was perfect. Do you think it's beneficial, like as a child, to have those attachments and those feelings to learn before, I guess, the age of 6?
The discontent feelings aren't required in order for you to learn. In fact, it makes learning more difficult. Here, I'll give you an example. Say you're a child and you're going to school, you're in 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, and your parents are attached to you, and you're attached to your parents. And now when you come home with good grades, your parents get so excited, and you get so excited as well. But then when you come home with bad grades, your parents get angry and bitter and harsh, and they start putting pressure on you to get good grades. Now you're afraid of your parents, of what they're going to do. And now that fear being in your mind, your performance actually goes down. Because there's so much fear in your mind, you can't think straight. You can't have concentration because you have so much fear in your mind. Whereas if your mind doesn't have that fear, it can be more focused and more concentrated. And now you can actually perform better in school and actually get the good grades that you and your parents want you to get anyway. So my son, he just started a new school about 2 months ago. And this school is really like strict with the grading. And he's come home with some grades that are like, whoa, like he's got like some F's, and he didn't have this at his other school. But I haven't yelled at him. I haven't hollered at him. I haven't put pressure on him. I'm just like, hey, we need to address this. We need to sit down. We need to study this. Like, you didn't learn these things at your other school, and now you're in a school that's testing you on these things. You need to learn. And then that frees up his mind that he can stay concentrated. He can stay focused. He doesn't have all this pressure on him, which is going to produce fear. And now he's going to erode his concentration, which is going to make it difficult for him to make wise decisions to test and to take the test. So if a parent is really interested in their child getting good grades, the last thing you're interested in doing is putting pressure on your child. Because when that stress and that anxiety and that fear comes up in the mind, they're not going to perform very well. So as a child, you don't need fear in order to learn to not cross the street when there's traffic coming. You can just teach a child through guidance, through wise decision making. Like, hey, see that car? If you stepped out in front of it, it would hurt you. Hold my hand and we're going to cross the street together until you learn how to cross the street. And then when you're 10, 12, 14 years old, you can cross the street by yourself, no worries. So you can teach them through wise decision making, not based in fear. And that's what I was getting to when we were talking about the cycle of rebirth, that your motivation to get to enlightenment shouldn't be because of the fear of being reborn. It should be because of wise decisions that you would like to make in this life.
That was perfect. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so we're quite a bit over our class time. Oh, you have a question? Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Get a mic. We're actually going to use all our mics today. We have so many mics so that you guys can use them all.
Hi, David. Thank you so much. I have a question related to craving, desire, attachment, and unconditional love. Just like sometimes, as for myself, I really enjoy the time I'm alone and I'm not attached to anybody, family members, boyfriend, or friends. I can just like live my own life is already enough. But like sometimes, like as you said before, like unconditional love is like something you don't want to change others, just want to let others be themselves, and you just love anybody. So like if I'm in a relationship and like someone really want to change me, and I really don't want to change them, change him, and just like, is that okay to just let it go, or if I cannot change something, just let it go? Or is my craving, desire, attachment to like, I want to just be myself? I'm just kind of confused.
Yeah, if you're in a relationship where someone's trying to change you, they're attached, they're having expectations, they're having wants, and this isn't going to be a healthy relationship because they're going to want this and you're going to be doing this, and they're going to be constantly trying to pressure you to do what they want you to do. And this is a person that's not practicing true love, to love you as you are. And it's going to be a constant struggle back and forth. It's better to find somebody that you can help them to learn what true love is, because most people don't understand what true love is. You've learned that through this program. So the more you practice true love, you'll be able to identify it when other people are practicing it. But it's very rare to find a partner who already knows what true love is and is practicing that. So you might need to find somebody who's open to learning about true love so they can practice it more and more. Because you would like to be able to make your own decisions and not feel this pressure to do what somebody else is expecting you to do. And that's where you're going to feel most comfortable, and they will feel most comfortable too, but they just don't realize it because they have those cravings in their mind and they're trying to pressure you and force you to do things their way. So if I was you, I would try to have some conversations to try to help them to understand what true love is and see if they're open to learning about it and practicing that. And ultimately, after 2, 3, 4 conversations, if they're just not interested, I would move on, because you guys are going to be struggling and fighting and pulling at each other back and forth, and they're not going to be happy and you're not going to be happy. And the relationship's just going to become, a bunch of discontentedness.
Yeah, I think so. And
that's what's happening, right?
Yeah, this is happening now. This current situation I'm facing. So just like kind of confused because I don't want to change anybody. But it's really hard to find someone like you're like want to learn something, like to change your mind or know what is true love. And sometimes, like just as my friend before, she's also here before. She said that because like in China, like if you like don't attach to somebody, they think you don't love them at all or something.
So I'm not suggesting that you should come to the temple and look for a boyfriend, but oftentimes that's what people end up doing. Is not because they're looking for a boyfriend, but oftentimes you might end up meeting someone at the temple who's already interested in the things that you're interested in. And that's how you'll find a partner for somebody who's interested in learning about true love. So right now, I'm not saying that you should come to the temple and be scouring the temple looking for somebody to date or anything like that, but you might end up meeting somebody through coming to classes like this that is into these kinds of things, and you guys might decide to end up having a relationship at some point. There's been many students over the years that that have done that, and interacted with different people, and they found a partner through coming to the temple. That wasn't their ultimate goal to come to the temple to find a partner, but it just so happened that they became interested in somebody who was learning these same things, and they've created a wonderful relationship with each other. So right now, you might find it as difficult to find a partner who's interested in true love and inner growth and development, but that might be because you're looking other places. Maybe Tinder, right? Or things like this, online things or something like that. But you might end up finding somebody through coming to wholesome events like this, where people are more into inner growth and developing their consciousness. And you might find somebody someday, you don't know.
I got it. But like, I'm also like, the last question is, if I enjoy time, I'm alone, like why I choose to be in a relationship or marriage?
Say again?
If I'm really enjoy the time I'm alone, like why do I choose to like have a relationship or marriage? Like what's that for?
Yeah, so some people can have a craving to be in a partnership, right? And like particularly if society, oftentimes society puts pressure on people to be in a relationship. But if you understand impermanence and you understand not everybody is going to be in a relationship. Some people are going to be in a relationship, some people aren't. Some people are going to be single. So if you're perfectly content and peaceful and joyful alone, then be alone, be single. There's no harm in that. You haven't done anything wrong. It doesn't mean that there's anything bad about you. It's just that you're perfectly content being alone. But if you would like to be with a partner and you would like to have a life partner, you can do that. But you have to be really wise about who you select as your partner, because the decisions that they make are going to affect you. It's kind of like if you're going to start a brand new company, if you pick a CEO or a COO for your company, this is going to determine whether your company lives or dies. The same thing is true about your life, that if you pick a wise partner, then you'll have a really wonderful, harmonious relationship together. But if you pick unwisely, it can produce a lot of difficulties in your life. So if it was me, if I was just getting onto the path to enlightenment, I didn't have a wife and I didn't have a son, I probably wouldn't have a partner, because it's much easier to get to enlightenment without a partner. But also, one of the ways to extinguish a craving, desire, attachment is to fulfill it. So for example, if you have a craving to go to the Philippines and you always wanted to go to the Philippines, you could cut it off and eliminate it from the mind and just never go to the Philippines. Or you could just go and see it and check it out. And then you're like, all right, been there, done that. I don't need to go to the Philippines. So if you have a craving to have a partner and you didn't have one, and you got all the way to the end of this life and you're like, I really wish I would have had a partner. I never had a partner. You're going to be reborn. you're not going to experience enlightenment because you still have a craving. So one of the ways to fulfill a craving is to just do it, is get a partner, but just be sure that you choose wisely, because it's such an important decision.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hello. I have a question about parents and their children. So I kind of just observed that my parents have some kind of like in their mind they have a image for me. So they believe that as their daughter, I gotta be, working in a 9-to-5 job, or having a steady boyfriend or something like that, or like to act like normal person. But I don't feel like following their ways. But when I refuse to live my life in their imagination, they became really irritated. And so the relationship with my parents just got worse. So I just want to know how to deal with these kind of things.
Okay, the first thing to understand is that you're not causing their anger. You can't cause somebody else to be angry or frustrated or agitated. What's causing their anger is their craving, their desire, their attachment, their expectations. If you do things their way, they get happy. But if you don't do things their way, they'll get angry or frustrated. So what you need to realize is you're not causing their emotions. And then understand that they are living their life and they're making the decisions for their life. And that's what they get to do. But you are living your life and you get to make the decisions for your life. Where their mind is confused is they think their role as a parent is to put their expectations on you. And then by controlling you, they think that they're going to get happy by controlling you. But they don't realize that that's not going to lead to their happiness. What they're trying to do is they're trying to get their cravings fulfilled. And they think if their cravings, desires, attachments are fulfilled, then they'll be able to be happy. Well, they will be happy for a period of time. If they have a certain expectation and you work your way up to that expectation, they'll be happy temporarily because it's conditional happiness. But then their expectations are going to change. And they're going to want something else. And now you're not meeting their expectations. They're going to be angry again. And now you're going to work and work and work and work and work and work and work. And then they're going to be happy for a period of time when you get there. But then they're going to change again. And now you got to work and work and work. They're never going to get happiness like that. They're going to get temporary happiness, but they're not going to get permanent happiness. But because of their lack of wisdom, this is what the unenlightened mind has. They think that the way to get to happiness is to force you to do what they want you to do. So you just need to realize that that's their expectations, that's their cravings. Your role in this life isn't to fulfill your parents' expectations. You'll never be able to fulfill their expectations. You might even tell them that. I told my parents that when I was about 17, 18 years old. I said, I'm never going to meet your expectations, and I'm not even trying to meet your expectations. They were like, what? Are you serious? I'm like, yep. I'm not going to ever meet your expectations. So you might as well just let them go. So you might need to have those kind of conversations. It doesn't mean your parents are going to instantly let go of their expectations. But as long as you know that you're not causing them to be angry, and as long as you know that your role in this life isn't to fulfill their expectations, you just keep doing what you know to be wise and what it is that you would like to do. And if they're angry, then they're angry. Eventually, they're going to have to let go of their expectations. And that's what's going to fulfill the elimination of their anger. But don't feel pressured into doing things their way, because they're living their life. They get to live their life and they get to make decisions for their life, but they don't get to make decisions for your life. You know, as a child, they were making a lot of decisions for you, and their mind hasn't realized that you've aged, you've gotten older, and their job isn't to tell you what to do and how to do it any longer. Their role is to step back and to let you make all your own decisions for yourself, and they should be there as a support to be able to help you and advise you as you ask for their help. They shouldn't be forcing it upon you. But because of their lack of wisdom, they don't know how to do that. And they think that what they're doing is love. This is the problem in the unenlightened mind. They think the way to love you is to get you to do things that they want you to do. And this is their craving, desire, attachment masquerading as love. Then they're thinking that it's love. So they won't be able to do anything different until they learn teachings like this from the Buddha, so that they can get their cravings, desires, attachments out of the way, and then their true love can shine through more and more. But right now, their true love is being tainted or polluted with these cravings, desires, attachments. But as long as you can see the difference, that what love is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. What craving, desire, attachment is that masquerades as love is, I want you to do this. I expect you to do this. You have to do it this way. And they think that that's their love, but it's not. So as long as you see that that's not their love, that's the craving, desire, attachment, and you don't need to conform to that. Just do what you think is wise. If they get angry, they get angry. So be it.
But seeing them acting like this kind of give me some kind of sorrow, because as a child, I did wish my parents to be happy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very kind of natural feeling, but I don't want to sacrifice my life to just fulfill their expectations. I think that's kind of ruin my life.
You can't make your parents happy. It's not possible for you to make your parents happy. Nobody can. Everybody's responsible for their own happiness. The way you get to happiness is to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments, your expectations. So as long as they have expectations of you, you can't make them happy, because you'll meet their expectations and they'll only be happy temporarily. And then once their expectations change, they're not happy anymore. So it doesn't matter what you do. You can't give them permanent happiness. They have to be able to acquire that for themselves. So you can let go of the burden and the responsibility of making your parents happy, because they have to get to that happiness themselves. My son doesn't make me happy. I'm already happy. I'm already joyful. When he comes home with good grades, I'm already happy before he comes home with good grades. When he came home with grades that were low, I was already happy. I was already happy. I just needed to help him get to the point where he had improved grades and teach him how to make wise decisions to improve his grades. But his good grades or his bad grades don't make me happy or sad. I'm just already joyful. I'm already happy before he comes home with any kind of grades.
All right.
But not everybody understands how to do that. That's the challenge.
So suppose that I don't want to make them happy anymore. But like, is there anything that I can do to help them? I mean,
do they speak English?
Yeah.
Okay, so you could send them a link to a video where I teach what's called the Four Noble Truths.
Oh, no. They don't speak English.
Oh, they don't speak English?
No, they don't speak
okay.
English.
So I can't help them myself.
Yeah.
But what they need to learn is they need to learn what's called the Four Noble Truths. Maybe you could learn the wisdom that I'm sharing with the Four Noble Truths and unconditional love, and then you can share it with them because you speak their language. That would be the best thing you could do. The Buddha teaches that once you're learning these teachings, that you can help your parents to learn these teachings too. But you would need to learn them first through the books and the videos and the podcast and coming to classes and attending online and things like this. And as you cultivate your wisdom, then you'd be able to help them if they're willing to learn from you.
That's the point. Maybe they are not willing.
That's one of the challenges. Is sometimes the ego is there. They don't want to learn from their child. And that's the results of their decisions. If they choose to be angry and upset the rest of their life, then that's what they're choosing. But if they're interested in something different and something better, you could help them, but they have to choose to do the work. If they're not choosing to learn and grow, they won't improve. You can't force somebody to get to enlightenment.
So in this case, shall I just let it go, or?
You're going to need to let it go regardless, but letting it go versus helping them, you can actually do both of those things at the same time if you know how to do it. But this is where your wisdom needs to be stronger. You need to learn the Eightfold Path and all the teachings that the Buddha shares.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So I see our class is slowly dwindling more and more as we go longer and longer. Usually I end class at 11 o'clock. It's now 11:40. There's actually a few more things here that I had planned to share, but I'm not going to share those with you guys. I'll just kind of end class because I understand class isn't permanent. People probably came here thinking an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours. And this is normal. People slowly kind of head out. I don't have an expectation that everybody will stay, but I'm very pleased to see that you guys have stayed and that you're willing to learn and you're interested to learn. That's wonderful that you guys have that dedication and diligence. So as you guys need help, I'm always here to help you and help you learn and help you grow. You can attend these classes, you can get all the books, you can get personal guidance. Just let me know what help you need and I'm here to help you. Next week in our Sunday class, the class is titled The 5 Hindrances. So all throughout this program, I teach people how to get to enlightenment. And then the Buddha teaches something called the 5 hindrances. These are the 5 things that are going to hinder you from getting to enlightenment. So I'm going to teach you what those are and how to overcome them. So if you guys would like to learn those things, you can attend either here at the temple or online next Sunday. So thank you all for joining here. You're welcome to join any of our classes, courses, or retreats. We have a course starting tomorrow that you're welcome to attend any part of that and any of the things that we do online as well. So have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Sawadee khap, sawadee khap, sawadee khap.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.